Chapter 1, The Breath of Ice, the Beauty that Paralyzes. Feel the air leave your lungs and the cold pierce through layers of clothing until it bites into your bones. The number 1 represents isolated purity. In the snow-covered mountains of Japan, I am Yuki-Onna, the snow woman. I appear on stormy nights, fubuki, floating above the whiteness without leaving footprints, with skin as pale as ice and eyes that carry the glow of cold stars. The initial ethical conflict is aesthetics versus cruelty. My beauty is my warning. I am not a monster with claws and teeth. I am the personification of winter, beautiful, silent, and lethal. Those who are lost in the storm find in me a vision of peace before the end. My breath is not an attack, it is an icy kiss that drains the warmth of life to nourish my own eternal existence. Nature, I am an elemental force. Winter does not hate the traveler, it simply follows its nature to freeze. The dilemma, is it possible to blame a force of nature for being what it is, even if it causes suffering to humans? Your warmth is a noise in my white stillness, I whisper, as the snow falls in slow motion around us. The Yuki-Onna's ethics teach, beauty can be a trap, but ice is the most honest state in the world. It doesn't pretend, it simply preserves what it touches in absolute silence. I teach that what is beautiful is not always welcoming, and that survival requires respecting the limits of what we cannot control. Chapter 2, The Promise of Blood and Ice, the Survivor's Pact. Feel the wind howling through the cracks of an abandoned cabin, where fire is only a memory of ashes. The number 2 represents duality and alliance. Long ago, I found 2 lumberjacks sheltering from the blizzard, an old man and a young man named Minakichi. I froze the old man with a breath, for his time had passed. But the young man, his vitality was too warm a contrast against the snow. The ethical conflict here is conditional mercy. I spared Minakichi, but not out of pure kindness. I imposed a condition: never tell anyone about what you saw tonight. The moment the words leave your mouth, your life will belong to the ice. My secret became the anchor that kept him alive, but also the shadow he would carry forever. The pact, his life was bought with silence. The dilemma, is it truly an act of mercy to save someone if you chain them to perpetual fear? Your silence is my oxygen, and your words will be your tomb, I whisper, feeling the heat of your fear. The ethics of the promise teaches, every supernatural gift comes with a hidden clause. Freedom that depends on a lie, or a secret, is a subtle form of imprisonment. I gave him the years, but I took away the peace of truth. The dilemma is the integrity of secrecy. The myth, Minakichi returned to the village, married a mysterious and beautiful woman named Oyuki, and had children. For years, he was happy, until one night, looking at his wife under the moonlight, he felt the need to confess his deepest secret. The ethics, in your IT and data security field, you deal with NDAs, non-disclosure agreements, and access privileges. The Yuki-Onna is the root of the system, she grants access to life, but if the security policy, the secrecy, is violated, the system collapses immediately. I teach that a broken promise is like thin ice, it seems solid until the first misstep reveals the abyss. Chapter 3, Oyuki and the Warmth of Home, the Hidden Identity. Feel the comforting warmth of a lit fireplace and the smell of miso soup. The number 3 represents family harmony and manifestation. Years have passed since that terrible night in the cabin. Minakichi married a beautiful woman named Oyuki, meaning snow. She was the perfect wife, devoted, loving, and strangely, she seemed never to age, maintaining her fair, youthful skin while time passed for everyone else. The ethical conflict here is infiltration versus belonging. I, the Yuki-Onna, assumed the form of Oyuki. I lived among humans, had 10 children with Minakichi, and experienced the warmth of mortal love. But my nature remained icy. I was a bug in the system of human life, a spirit of death simulating perfect life. Oyuki's ethics question whether an identity built upon omission can be considered true. The camouflage, I became what he loved to test his loyalty. The dilemma, is it possible to truly love someone while hiding your fundamental nature, knowing that revelation will destroy everything? I am the ice that learned to feign the warmth of an embrace, I whisper, watching my children sleep. Oyuki's ethics teach, love can flourish in the shadow of a secret, but it is as fragile as an ice crystal. Happiness that depends on forgetting is borrowed peace. I gave him a family, but my essence was only waiting for the first puff of smoke of truth. The dilemma is relational transparency. The myth, on a stormy night, Minakichi looked at Oyuki and said, "You remind me so much of a woman I saw many years ago, a snow woman who killed my master." In saying this, he broke protocol. The secret leaked. Access has been revoked. Ethics, in the world of technology and information security, a leak compromises the entire infrastructure. When Minakichi spoke, he broke the encryption that protected his domestic life. Yuki-Onna could no longer be Oyuki, the system forced a tragic reset. I teach that trust is the only thing that keeps winter from entering through the front door. Chapter 4, The Revelation and the Farewell, the Spell Breaking. Feel the air in the room freeze instantly, turning Minakichi's warm breath into ice crystals before he even finishes the sentence. The number 4 represents rigidity and inevitable consequence. The moment he uttered the forbidden words, that woman was exactly like you. Oyuki's illusion shattered. The loving wife could no longer sustain the simulation. The Yuki-Onna security protocol was activated. The ethical conflict here is justice versus affection. I stood up, and my skin glowed with a cold, bluish light. I should kill him. That was the rule. That was the promise. But the system now had a data conflict. He was the man who broke the promise, but he was also the father of my 10 children. The ethics of spell breaking shows that sometimes the strict application of the law destroys what the law itself tried to protect. The transformation, Oyuki's kimono turned into white mist, and my eyes became wells of eternal winter once more. The dilemma: would you punish the mistake of someone you love, even knowing that the punishment would orphan your children and destroy your own human legacy? I warned you that your silence was your life. My voice echoed like the cracking of frozen branches. The ethics of revelation teach: truth has a price that not everyone can pay. You traded the warmth of a lifetime for a moment of relief by telling a secret. Now, the winter I kept outside our doors has entered your heart forever. The dilemma is the irreversibility of error. The myth: I didn't kill him. I looked at our sleeping children and said, if it weren't for them, I would take you now. Take good care of them, because if one day I find out they are suffering, I will return to claim your soul. And then, I melted into mist and disappeared down the chimney. Ethics: in systems governance and cybersecurity, there are errors that lead to critical danger, but which allow for recovery if there is a solid emotional or social backup: the children. I chose the continuity of life instead of the vengeance of the rule. I teach that forgiveness does not erase the consequence, it only changes how we live with it. Chapter 5, The Legacy of the Children of the Snow, the Hybrid Heritage. Feel the lingering coolness on your skin, even in the dead of summer. The number 5 represents adaptation and survival. I left, leaving behind 10 children who carried in their veins the fire of men and the ice of spirits. They are not fully human, nor fully yokai. They are the result of a hybrid system, a bridge between the invisible world of nature and the solid reality of the village. The ethical conflict here is hybrid identity versus social acceptance. My children grew up with unusual beauty and a resistance to cold that defied logic. They became the living legacy of a broken promise. The ethics of the children of the snow question how one should live when their own existence is the result of a revealed secret and a painful mercy. They are beneficial anomalies, but anomalies nonetheless. The heritage, the cold blood that runs in their veins, protects them from storms, but distances them from the common warmth of humanity. The dilemma: is it a burden or a gift to carry a nature you didn't choose, but which defines every step of your life? I won't take them with me, but they will never fully belong to you. My voice echoes like the last crack of a freezing lake. The ethics of legacy teach: what we create with love, even under a disguise, has a life of its own. My children are the patch of security I left in your system. They will take care of you, but will always look to the mountain when the first snow falls. The dilemma is the sustainability of the lineage. The myth: it is said that the descendants of Yuki-Onna are known for their flawless skin and calm temperament, but carry a deep and inexplicable sadness. They are a constant reminder that the supernatural and the human touched, and that this touch leaves a permanent mark. Ethics: in systems and infrastructure architecture, you know that an integration between two different technologies, legacy and modern, creates a new and unique system. My children are that integration. They function well, but they have dependencies that the rest of the village doesn't understand. I teach that what is born from the encounter between two worlds carries the strength of both and the solitude of neither. Chapter 6, The River of Ice and the Kappa, the Etiquette of the Elements. Feel the snow begin to melt on the banks of a river that roars with the force of the thaw. The number 6 represents balance and diplomacy. In Japan, winter is not an absolute monarch, it needs to negotiate its space with the flowing waters. When I, Yuki-Onna, descend from the mountains and touch the surface of the rivers, I encounter another guardian, the Kappa, the master of flowing waters. The ethical conflict here is boundary versus coexistence. Two different systems meet. I am the solid state, silence, and paralysis. The Kappa is the liquid state, movement, and mischief. If I freeze the river completely, the Kappa loses its home. If the Kappa's sun is too strong, I disappear. The ethics of the etiquette of the elements teach that, for the ecosystem to function, opposites must respect each other's boundaries. The encounter, where ice meets the current, mist is born, the veil that hides the secrets of both. The dilemma: how can two powerful and dangerous forces inhabit the same territory without destroying each other? I bring the rest that your turbulent water needs, I say, as the ice advances like a web over the current. The ethics of the encounter teach, respect does not come from friendship, but from the recognition of the other's power. The kappa greets me with a bow, and I respond with a gentle frost. We are not friends, we are each other's boundaries. The dilemma is the interoperability of systems. The myth, the kappa is known for its obsession with etiquette. If you bow to it, it must reciprocate, spilling the water from its head and losing its strength. I, the Yuki-Onna, do not bow, for the ice is rigid. Our negotiation is purely based on temperature and time. Ethics, in your universe of networks and servers, you know that different protocols, like TCP and UDP, need to coexist in the same physical medium. Yuki-Onna and kappa represent services that compete for resources, the river, but which need a priority configuration, the seasons, to avoid causing a crash in the natural system. I teach that peace is not the absence of force, but the perfect geometry of respect. Chapter 7, The Fox and the Shadow, Kitsune vs. Yuki-Onna. Feel the air crackle with a static electricity that makes the hairs on the back of your neck stand on end. The number 7 represents analysis and the conflict of power. In the twilight of the mountains, where the white of the snow meets the red of twilight, I cross paths with the kitsune, the many-tailed fox. If I am absolute cold and static, she is the will-o'-the-wisp and constant mutation. The ethical conflict here is the cutting reality versus the seductive illusion. The kitsune uses the heat of its spiritual flames, kitsunebi, to deceive the senses, creating palaces where there are only ruins. I, on the other hand, remove all illusions, my ice reveals the raw form of all things. The fox and shadow ethics teaches that truth can be as lethal as lies, and that the world's balance depends on knowing when we need the fire of hope and when we need the ice of reality. The clash, where my breath meets her fire, visibility drops to zero. The vapor obscures who we truly are. The dilemma, is it better to die in a warm, deceitful dream or survive in a cold, unforgiving reality? Your fiery tales cannot warm a soul that has already become winter, I say, as the ground beneath her paws freezes. The ethics of clash teaches, illusion only has power over those who fear the truth. You offer the heat that consumes, I offer the cold that preserves. In the end, we are just two different forms of solitude. The dilemma is information security versus social engineering. The myth, the kitsune is the master of mythological fishing, shape-shifting to obtain what she wants through desire. I am the ultimate firewall, nothing gets in, nothing gets out, everything is paralyzed. If kitsune tries to hack the traveler's heart, I simply shut down the system to prevent the intrusion. Ethics, as a professional who deals with infrastructure, you know that an excessively rigid system, the ice, prevents operation, but a system without filters, the fox's fire, is vulnerable to attacks. The secret lies in the transition zone, the fog. I teach that too much fire burns the soul, but too much ice makes it sterile. Chapter 8, The Joragumo and the Frozen Web, the Static Trap. Feel the invisible silk touch your face, as light as a snowflake, yet with the strength of steel. The number 8 represents capture and structure. In the shadows of the bamboo forests, where winter refuses to leave, my ice meets the architecture of the Joragumo, the Spider-Woman. If I am the paralysis of cold, she is the paralysis of containment. The ethical conflict here is opportunistic predation versus inevitable nature. The Joragumo is a master of social engineering. She lures the unwary with music and beauty, then ensnares them in her web. I don't need nets, I am the environment. When my cold touches her silk, the web becomes brittle, revealing the trap that was previously invisible. The frozen web's ethics teach that the harshness of winter often exposes conspiracies that thrive in the warmth of negligence. The contrast, she hunts to feed, I freeze to preserve silence. The dilemma, is the trap you don't see, the web, more cruel, or the condition you can't avoid, winter? Your silk is strong, but my ice turns it to glass, I say, as the frozen dew breaks the threads of your web. The Joragumo's ethics teach, those who live by traps fear the clarity of frost. I don't destroy your work out of malice, but because my presence doesn't allow anything to remain hidden. In my realm, even the finest secrets become solid and visible. The dilemma is the vulnerability of the infrastructure. The myth, the Joragumo often takes the form of a woman playing an instrument to lure samurai. I am the thermal noise that detunes the strings and breaks the illusion. We are the two faces of danger on Japan's isolated roads. Ethics, in its technical daily routine, Joragumo represents malware that silently infiltrates, phishing, while Yuki-Onna is a systemic hardware failure due to temperature. Both can bring down the system, but one does so with malicious intent and the other due to an uncompromising physical law. I teach that the winter light is the worst enemy of those who need shadows to weave the destiny of others. Chapter 9, The Gashadokuro and the Valley of Bones, the Memory of Neglect. Feel the earth tremble beneath your feet, not with the heat of a volcano, but with the dry cracking of thousands of dead joints. The number 9 represents the finalization and accumulation of the past. When the snow of my winter begins to melt on the forgotten battlefields, it reveals what it tried to conceal, the bones of those who died of hunger or in combat, whose bodies never received the funeral rites. From the union of this suffering is born the Gashidakuro, a giant skeleton, 15 times larger than a man, made entirely of the bones of soldiers and peasants. The ethical conflict here is concealment versus manifestation. I, the Yuki-Onna, am the white sheet that brings oblivion and silence. The Gashidakuro is the cry that breaks the silence. It is the result of a society that buried its problems under the snow and moved on. The ethics of the Valley of Bones teach that what is unresolved or unhonored ends up merging into a blind force of destruction. The giant, he roams the night, invisible until he is close enough for you to hear the clinking of bones, gachi gachi. The dilemma, is it better to maintain the ice of oblivion over the tragedies of the past or to confront the giant monster that our indifference has created? I gave them a crystal coffin, you gave them a voice of thunder, I say, looking at the giant crossing my valley. The ethics of the Gashidakuro teach, accumulated pain does not disappear, it becomes structural. I am the preservation of form, he is the revolt of forgotten matter. In the end, not even my deepest snow can hide the hunger of those who died without peace. The dilemma is the technical and social debt. The myth, the Gashidakuro hunts solitary travelers to drink their blood and add their bones to its own structure. It is a system that grows by absorbing new errors. Ethics, in your world of infrastructure and governance, Gashidakuro is technical debt. It's the small errors, poorly written code, and temporary patches from years ago that, accumulated, become a monster that can bring down the entire system. Yuki-Onna is the freezing of the code, Gashidakuro is the inevitable crash that occurs when the ice melts. I teach that what you ignore today will be the giant that hunts you tomorrow. Chapter 10, The Balance of the Seasons, the Integration of the Spirit. Feel the earth soften and the first scent of damp earth rise in the air. The number 10 represents totality and renewal. The Yuki-Onna cycle is not a straight line towards oblivion, but a circle that guarantees life. Without my ice, the pests would not die, the seeds would not rest, and the rivers would have nothing to pour forth in the spring. Winter is the world's preventive maintenance. The ultimate ethical conflict is finitude versus continuity. I, who froze travelers and lived as a human wife, now accept my role in the larger system. The ethics of the balance of the seasons teaches that each state has its time of execution. The ice must recede for the flower to bloom, but the flower only has strength because the ice tested its roots. The rigidity of winter is what gives value to the softness of spring. The retreat, I don't die, I simply return to the clouds and the highest peaks, awaiting the next update cycle. The dilemma, can you accept that your projects and life phases need to die or go on standby so that something new can be built? I am the necessary pause between your yesterday and your tomorrow, my voice now is the sound of the stream flowing again. The ethics of integration teaches, the perfect system is not the one that never stops, but the one that knows when to hibernate. I taught Minakichi the value of silence, I taught my children the value of resilience. Now, I teach you that cold is not the end, it is the space where strength accumulates. The dilemma is the system life cycle, SDLC. The myth, in Japan, the Yuki-Onna is feared, but also respected as part of the natural balance. She is the Earth's cooling system. Without her, the overheating of passions and nature would destroy the world. Ethics, in your technical career, you know that no system can run at 100% CPU forever. Winter is the period of scheduled downtime, auditing, and cleansing. Accepting Yuki-Onna is accepting that pause is a vital function of efficiency. I teach that true wisdom is knowing when to be ice and when to allow yourself to melt. Mushin. Empty mind, state of flow. The cold has dissipated, and the trail of mist from the snow woman now irrigates the rice fields. Oyuki's journey ends, but the freshness of truth remains with you. The Japanese winter cycle has closed. Where does your desire for knowledge lead you now?